The O'Farrell government may well have won a landslide victory at the March elections, but its lack of control of the Upper House has caused a few headaches this week. First, Christian Democrat leader Fred Nile said he'd join with Labor and the Greens to block key government legislation if the ethics classes in schools continue. At the same time, the Shooters and Fishers Party wants the government to make it easier for public schools to have the sport of shooting as part of the curriculum. It also wants amendments to the Firearms Act, which some say will soften the restrictions on gun owners. The Greens have taken aim at the move, saying the Shooters and Fishers are hoping their support for the government's IR amendments will help with their own legislation. Cara Meldrum-Hanna reports.
This is not your average school sports competition. But it is one of the most prestigious and private sporting events on the New South Wales elite school calendar, the annual GPS Rifle Shooting Premiership.
Well, shooting was originated in the very early years of the school. That means in the mid-1890s. So it's been running for well over 100 years now. So our boys in the competition feel like they're a part of something bigger, perhaps, and I think that's a really good thing.
Centre on target 2.
The timing of this year's competition could not have come at a more politically charged moment in New South Wales. The argument is currently that the sport of shooting encourages an unhealthy gun culture and possibly aggression and violence. What's your take on that?
Completely to the contrary. I don't believe that's true at all. In fact, it's quite the reverse. I believe that shooting, first of all, teaches real responsibility. Do
you think there's anything aggressive or violent about this sport?
This sport? No. I think they're shooting targets. I think the fear comes from lack of understanding more than anything.
I know we have the problem in America with the mass shootings there, but I think my candid opinion is that that's not Australian.
In New South Wales, the Shooters and the Fishers Party want events like this one at Hornsby Rifle Range in Sydney's North Shore to be part of the state's public school sporting curriculum. The principal of the only private girls' school competing at this competition thinks that's a good idea.
I would be very supportive of it because I believe there is a great deal of benefit to be gained from this. It very much promotes teamwork, and I think that that's very, very significant.
And you believe that public schools should be able to access this sport readily and offer it?
I can't see any reason why not.
But this man does.
The Greens are opposed to and remain adamantly opposed to having more guns in the hands of kids in our public schools.
Have you attended a school, a shooting competition?
No, I've never attended a shooting competition.
Well, we attended one yesterday. It was the GPS competition. There was nothing aggressive or violent about that sport whatsoever. It was a sport of skill, focus and self-discipline.
Well, the Greens are not about abolishing the sport of shooting.
The Shooters and Fishers Party want the Department of Education to cut the red tape to make the sport of shooting more easily available to all of the state's public schools. They've also introduced legislation into Parliament for a raft of changes to the current gun ownership laws that apply in New South Wales. And private schools offering shooting as a sport have unwittingly been caught up in the controversy.
And to tie the two together, I think, is doing a disservice to shooting as a sport and the good things that these kids are getting out of it today.
Is it fair to mix the two?
Well, it is absolutely fair because these are two sides of the coin, shooters. They want to get the legislative changes to weaken our gun laws, but they also at the same time thought that they could slip in under the radar these administrative changes in our public schools.
We'd like to see the introduction of firearms and shooting and safety training as just a normal part of the educative sports programs in public schools in New South Wales. That's all we're talking about, nothing more, nothing less.
They want to get kids, young kids, having access, getting their hands on guns, familiarising themselves with weapons, treating guns as an ordinary part of their school day, treating guns as an ordinary part of their school week. That's where they want to start with their gun culture.
I can't see how it's unsafe or unhealthy to educate children on the safe use of firearms and the rules around them and the implications for using firearms. I'd just like to try to remove perhaps a little bit of the blurring and let a little bit of reality shine in.
Well, Robert, this is certainly a more personalised office in Parliament House. Robert Borzak is not a sporting shooter. His passion lies in game hunting. Yes, you definitely know where you are when you step foot in here.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you have on your wall here.
That's a Malacca and Rooster stag that are running around wild on a couple of private properties up in Cape York in Queensland.
And you shot this one?
Yeah, I shot that one, that's right. And then that's a common red fox, shot somewhere around Goulburn and with a cockatiel in its mouth. So it's meant to be indicative of the sort of damage that these animals can do to the native fauna.
So we need our firearms?
Well, we need our firearms, but even more so, we need people interested in participating in the hunting programs.
They hide behind the guise of Olympic sports and target shooting. That's not their primary interest. Their primary interest is blood sports, and I think it should be recognised for that.
It's not a blood sport.
Well, it's not a blood sport. I think it's a necessity.
The shooters and the fishers, along with the Christian Democrats, hold the balance of power in the New South Wales Upper House. Last week, the shooters and the fishers introduced the Firearms Amendment Bill, which proposes significant changes in the rules of gun ownership.
In fact, the first piece of legislation that was moved after they signed off on the government's industrial relations amendments. And that piece of legislation wants to water down New South Wales gun laws, so as New South Wales will have the laxest gun laws in Australia.
You note the timing of the introduction of this legislation. Why?
Well, it's very clear that those right-wing micro-parties in the New South Wales Upper House feel that they can use their ability to block government legislation or support government legislation as political capital in getting a return in their pet areas.
The legislation that I've just put on the table is designed to improve, as far as we're concerned, put some moderate improvements and a bit of a removal of the red tape from the existing firearms legislation. I think most of the stuff that we're looking to try to achieve properly explained is good common sense as well.
What's common sense about a child under 12 having access to an air rifle?
Well, because it starts the process of training. It starts the process of discipline.
But what's common sense about wiping away the need to actually register air rifles?
Well, look, air rifles themselves per se are a very low impact environment type weapon or a firearm.
Well, can an air rifle kill an animal?
Oh, an air rifle can kill an animal, that's right.
If an air rifle could kill a rabbit, could it, say, kill a newborn? A baby?
Well, perhaps it could.
Another controversial amendment in the bill aims to change the current laws applying to the removal of firearms from a domestic violence situation.
As the law stands, when there's domestic violence order made, anyone who has a gun licence, has a gun, must immediately surrender the weapons. The shooters want to have those people hold on to their guns until they get a formal letter from the Minister for Police.
At the moment, police can turn up at your door, allege an AVO has been issued, and then help themselves to your firearms. And regardless of how expensive they are, regardless of how much investment in time and money has been put into them, they're thrown in the back of a truck and treated like a piece of garbage and then taken down the road. And then you can fight to get them back.
Well, some would say it's not right for an allegedly violent person to remain controlled.
But again, the word's allegedly. Allegedly.
It's a preventative measure.
Well, but it's still allegedly. That's the issue.
You can be confident that we won't be seeing any rise in homicides or fatalities.
Yep. I can't see. In fact, I think you might see the opposite.
We're victims of an amendment. There could be more victims.
In Sydney's inner west, Michelle Fernando, her sister Di, and their mother Carmen are following the current gun laws debate with a close personal interest. They represent the human face of what can go wrong when legislation designed to protect the community is watered down. 3 years ago, in a deal with the previous Labor government, the Shooters and the Fishers party managed to get one amendment to the Firearms Act through the Upper House. Known as Section 6B, the amendment allowed unlicensed people to be trained in the use of a semi-automatic firearm at approved shooting ranges.
It allows people to visit a gun club and be given access to a firearm if they've completed a questionnaire and answered no to all the questions.
Unlicensed?
Completely unlicensed, and they've not been vetted. So the vetting system is a self-report. My sister, who suffers from a mental illness, was able to obtain a firearm.
It's alleged she used this weapon to kill her father. Last year, Michelle Fernando's sister, a diagnosed schizophrenic, was allowed to attend and train at a pistol club in Sydney thanks to Section 6B. Over the course of several weeks, she learned how to load, fire and reload a semi-automatic pistol. What happened that day is to be determined by a court, but the family believe the gun should never have left the pistol club.
She was given it to use, and nobody took it back. And now she and we are all suffering the consequences.
I think that he'd be horrified by those changes that were made to the legislation in 2008 that so few people
even knew about,
are aware of.
1 year on, the Fernando family are still fighting for Section 6B to be urgently removed from the Firearms Act. They have written countless letters to the Labor government and the new Liberal government.
nobody wants to do anything.
Up until now, their requests have fallen on deaf ears.
My letter to Verity Firth, which was never responded to.
No.
Right up until this recent letter from Mr. O'Farrell flicking our request to the Attorney General,
Who
I had already written to, and
Yeah.
he
Anyway,
had,
Yeah.
yes.
flicked us to the police minister.
Joan.
Yes. So the police minister apparently is waiting for advice from the Commissioner of Police.
Oh, okay. He needs advice on right and wrong. That's interesting.
If that wasn't insult enough, the Fernando family are now desperately watching on as the latest raft of proposed amendments from the shooters and the fishers are introduced to Parliament for debate.
I'm furious that it could be considered, what should be being considered is fixing the Firearms Act. The insertion of Section 6B was a dreadful error of judgment, and it needs to be fixed.
So if the government thinks they can just wait us out, they're wrong. We're coming. And we're bringing all of our friends and all of our family with us. And this legislation will change. It might not change this year, it might not change in 6 months, but it will be gone.
I would like to make sure that something good comes out of this event.
And the New South Wales Police Minister was unavailable today, but according to a spokesman, the Minister has now decided to review Section 6B of the Firearms Act. The spokesman also said the government has no plans to change the strict regulations which apply to sports shooting in public schools. He added that the government will not be changing the Firearms Act in relation to children under 12 having access to air rifles, nor will it be moving away from the requirement that guns must be surrendered when an AVO is issued.